Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel, where I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull. Gonna get started with a bit of Geoguessr once I these windows exactly where I want them. Uh, and where's the Geoguessr window? Okay, let's do this. Invite some friends. Hello, Adam. Anyone who wants to join in, I'm just dropping the link in chat. Now let's see where we end up. Okay, I immediately think Germany. This just immediately has a German feel to it. Yeah, Netto. That's a German discounter. Puntovnia, Budovljana. Oh, this might actually be Poland. Trzebiatów, Szczecin, Dziwnówek. Okay, yeah. Yeah, we're someplace in Poland not far from Szczecin. It looks like it's the adjacent countries. Szczecin. Okay, so... Hello, Shakespeare. ¿Cómo estás? Trzebiatów, Dziwnówek. Gdzie to jest? What are we looking at? 103 and 107. Really? Hang on a second. That's weird. Yeah, I mean, my audio's on. I think that might be your audio. You hear me okay, right, Adam? Because I'm getting, like, correct audio readings over here. Well, there you go. Good to hear it. A ver, 107. Está en la carretera nacional 107. That's what I thought. Kurnovo. $64 kilometers. 47.92. Oh, much better than yesterday. Yesterday was shit. Yesterday, every single possible thing that could have sucked. Among other things, I had to help install a printer. And there was a Mac in the mix. And let me just say, if you ever find yourself in a situation of having to install a printer on a Mac Big Sur running OS2 Mac OS Big Sur, and it's a Canon printer, the Canon drivers will not work on it. Because for some reason, the Canon website is designed so badly that you have to lie to them about the OS that the Mac is using in order to be able to get their fucking drivers to work on it. This and many other things made my day all sorts of crappy yesterday. And then I had connection trouble on stream, and finally I decided I was just too exhausted from all that crap to even think of streaming last night. But I'm feeling a lot better now. I had a really good day today. My connection on the hyperpolyglotting stream was so unstable that it was taking 5 minutes for chat would say things, and I would respond immediately, and it would take them 5 minutes to see my reply. 5 whole minutes. And no matter how many times I tried refreshing my connection, it feels kind of South American, but also not. Residencia. Okay. Para majors. No. This is... Okay, we're in Catalonia. Aquesta es Catalunya. Okay. But it doesn't really feel like Barcelona. Someplace in Catalonia. Wait, this is... I've just gone in a circle. Wonderful. But today, everything went well. I got my 100th follower on hyperpolyglotting. That was neat. The pizzas that I made came out beautifully. I am officially a member of the IWW now. Madre. Okay, come on. Yeah, a much better day all around. Oh, hold on, what was that? Madera Cerrero. HRH. Hombre re hueone. La de Mosorro, la barreta, los virtuts. Okay, if we go this way, we find some virtues. It's gonna be like a fucking pilgrimage or something. Tascantique. Pedron Sec. Thank you. It's a thing I've been meaning to do, and thinking it would be a good idea to do, and then forgetting to do for Villafranca. Okay, I feel like that's between Barcelona and France. I feel like I went through there on the train to Cervera. Hostalric, Vallmanya, Montbarbat, Canyelles, Santa Ceclina, Llagostera. La Scala. Okay, I'm just gonna say someplace on the Barcelona-Cervera railway area. Oh, fuck, I was way off. 288 kilometers. Okay, and now we're indoors. I feel like this is gonna be Japan. Indoors often is. Yep, Japan. Furonto. Okay, so we are someplace in Japan. When I was in Portugal, I got my Carta de Peregrinos for the Lisbon route to Santiago de Compostela, since it was the most important pilgrimage site in the Middle Ages. Ah. Ah, sei dos Lisboa. Eu não sei do Lisboa. Eu não... I've only been to one Santiago. And it's the one that smells like tear gas. Hello, Shadow4222. Welcome. We are someplace in Japan. Tensankaku. Kamiyunって知らねえよこれ。なんか田舎みたい。Where are you joining us from, Shadow4222? Ah, na willkommen. Wir machen jetzt gerade ein bisschen Geoguessr und dann später geht's zum Roasten. Yeah, first we'll figure out where the hell in Japan we are. Oh, let me see. 関係者以外、白浜ゴルフクラブ。白浜 Golf Club. Kodan Shari. Ah, also ich habe 20 Arbeitssprachen und dann gibt's noch so um die 20, die ich so einigermaßen gut kann. Aber die Arbeitssprachen, das sind ja also die meisten wichtigsten EU-Sprachen und daneben auch noch Russisch, Japanisch, Koreanisch, Jiddisch, Afrikaans und so. Und dann gibt's halt noch 20, die ich so halbwegs kann. Okay. 日本の一体どこなんだ？白浜って知らねえ。I mean, I'm guessing it's seaside because it means white beach, but that doesn't narrow it down in a country that's made up of islands. There could very well be multiple Shirahama. Tea is doing me good. Okay, we need a prefectural route or something. That will narrow it down. Sandanya. Wasigoda. Minamiki Shirahama Kuko. Hiraksahara. Sandanbeki. Rinkai. 知らねえよ、これ。いいな、like, mal auf die Gegend hier tippen. Because most of the time, the indoor Japanese places I've been to in Geoguessr, they've been around Yokohama. I could very well be wrong. I mean, it could be Totoriken. Been getting that a fair bit lately. Like, I have to say, this is the only reason I've actually really begun to properly learn where the prefectures are. Until Geoguessr, the only prefectures I really knew were like Chiba, Tokyo, Aichi, and Mie. Aichi and Mie because I was an exchange student there. Okue, Kotoura. Shirani. Oh, I wasn't too far off. Wakayama ke. Oh, what a na. Okay, now my windows are out of order again. To get them rearranged so that I can actually see the shit. Okay. Monte Canario, Caldas N115. A ver, ¿qué tenemos acá? Río Mayor, Caldas. Yeah, okay, we're someplace Portuguese speaking. Hard to say where just yet. I mean, Brazil would be statistically most likely. But until I see a stop sign, I'm not going to believe it's Brazil. Come on. Let's see, what do we get? Oh, hold on, what was that? Oh, shoot. Serrão. Casarão. Okay, I think we're probably actually in Portugal. Something about the fonts on these signs and actually the altogether better signposting. Yeah, this isn't Portugal. Well, no, the stop signs in Portugal follow the EU standard. In the EU, stop signs have to say stop. In South America, both Portugal. Hang on a second. In South America, both Portuguese speaking and Spanish speaking, they say pare. Pare. So, one easy way to tell where you are between Spanish and Portuguese speaking countries is to see if the stop sign says stop or pare. Of course, if it says alto, then yeah, we are definitely in Portugal. That is European signposting symbols. Uno Coimbra. Cercal. $78 kilometers off, not too bad. 5 of 5. This looks North American. Hey, Phoenix. Yeah, I wasn't on last night. I had a shitty day and just wasn't feeling up to it. Sandwich, bière, vin. Okay, we must be in Quebec. This feels Quebec. Because this, like, feels like New York. But it's in French. L'Auto-Québec. Centre validation. Okay, yeah, we're in Quebec. Yeah, it was just like every single possible thing that could go wrong yesterday was going wrong, and so I just felt like curling up watching Georgian cookery shows and relaxing. Yeah, I feel like we're probably in Montreal. Troisième Avenue. Hmm. Quebec is so weird because it's all in French, Oh, see, here's another example of stop signs. See, if the stop sign says arrêt, you're in Canada. In France, they say stop. Dépanneur. This is a very Quebecois term. Means a corner shop. In France, it would mean, like, scrap yard. Buanderie. D'Endurant. I know this street. I believe this is in Rosemont. Okay, I think a friend of mine lives here in that area. What was it? D'Endurant. Vieux-Ville, Hochelaga. Chambly, Aylwin, Rue Aylwin. Lleva el nombre de ese chuche su madre de Aylwin, weón. Fucking Boric just put up a statue to that prick. He's one of the major instigators of the 73 coup. And so, since Chile is a very Orwellian sort of place, especially the ruling class, they hail him as one of the founders of democracy. Like, Pinochet could not have taken over without his help. Yeah. Yes, we did. We did indeed. My French is very heavily influenced by Quebec because that's just the French-speaking place I've spent the most time in. This is Montreal. This has gotta be. This just looks so much like Montreal. I'm gonna say it's in Rosemont. 1.5 kilometers, Vieux-Rosemont. I knew it. I've stayed in this area a few times. A friend of mine lives here. 23,288. Yeah, Chile basically copies all of the worst stuff the US does and finds ways to make it more fucked up. Like, I mean, they've got charter schools too, except they call them Colegio Particulares Subvencionado. And, I mean, they are just absolutely disastrous. See, technically, it's illegal to make a profit. Except that everyone knows that the people who run them make a huge profit. So every few years, the government pretends to ban making a profit. And then they say, oh, look, we've really made a step towards free education. It's pathetic. Okay, but it is time to move on to the part where we roast. Okay. We've got some interesting material here. Let me just... oh, VLC Media Player, where have you gone? There we go. All right. We've got some interesting options here. We've got Has talking about China's COVID policy, and it's going to be interesting to see how he squares that circle of somehow defending China at the same time as supporting, like, the people who are anti-mask even when, like, fucking liberals were still pro-mask. We've got Caleb Maupin telling us what he believes. PragerU asks, should San Francisco guarantee income for trans people? And PragerU also asks whether you should care about Israel. I'm thinking maybe we start out with a PragerU and then move on. Oh, and we've also got Xander Hole on the subject of abuse and toxicity on the left, which of which he's like an example, except for the part where he's not really on the left. He just sort of shows up and won't go away. Okay. I think we're going to start with Should You Care About Israel? That'll be a nice little short. Aufnahme starten. And I gotta get this crop right. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Like, that's not something you should ever brag about. Like, that's the sort of thing that you're supposed to hide out when you've been that, so because otherwise, you know, you might end up on trial for war crimes. But okay. Yeah. Okay, first of all, stop with the Jewish state bullshit. Stop equating Israel with Jews. It's the state of the Zionist movement. Most Jews don't live there. The tendency is actually for more and more Jews to live elsewhere because the fash have become so ubiquitous in Israel that even like mildly liberal Israeli Jews have decided to start, reclaiming their ancestral passports and moving to Berlin and London and, Canada, the US, Paris. I mean, Berlin's very popular. Oh, shit. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, we're gonna give this a. We'll start this over.
2019 to 2021, I was the National Security Advisor to the President of the United States. During those 2 years,
And he fucking and he brags about that. Although it's kind of interesting how he doesn't say the name of the president he was NS advisor to.
I was preoccupied with one thing: assisting the President with keeping our nation safe. Anyone who wants to do that spends a lot of time thinking about Israel, for the simple reason that the Jewish state
Yes, and we've already covered why it's anti-Semitic to call it the Jewish state.
is vital to America's security.
Which is to say that it is absolute. And the thing is, this isn't a lie. You get some people who'll be like, "Oh, it's the Israel lobby and all this shit." But here's the thing: the Israel is literally the only stable base for U.S. imperialist power projection in the region. It is the only place where there is an actual popular base that supports having the U.S. in the region. Everywhere else in the region, people just detest them. And the U.S. is as unpopular as the U.S. is worldwide. In the Middle East, the U.S. is even less so. Nobody wants to see the U.S. and I mean, not even the ruling classes to a certain extent, because the U.S. actually makes it awkward for them. I mean, them more than anybody, but even they actually have a lot of complaints because it kind of makes it awkward for them because they look like the puppets of a shitty imperialist regime because they kind of are that.
Israel
And of course, when you understand that America's security actually means the profits of the arms companies and the oil majors, then it all makes sense. Now, that some people will be like, but Israel doesn't have oil. Well, first of all, there's natural gas deposits off of Gaza that Israel is illegally exploiting. Second of all, Israel drives the oil prices up by maintaining a certain level of tension in the region at all times. That's what the oil companies want. They want excuses to make it harder to buy the stuff, make it more expensive, excuses to keep it in the ground and keep it scarce so that they can jack the prices up. and Israel provides that.
Israel's not much bigger than New Jersey, but because of where it's located, its history, and the leadership it plays in technology, Israel
Okay, that Jesus looks like if he's from South Park.
plays an outsized role in international
And I mean, what does it say? I mean, the fact that the image they use for its history is just Jesus?
politics. Israel's located in one of the toughest neighborhoods in the world, the Middle East.
Yeah, and they mean that tough neighborhood in the same way guys like this talk about a tough neighborhood when, like... oh, a healing bath. Shit, that sounds good. A healing bath and, like, a couple of bottles of champagne.
If World War III ever happens, it's as likely to start there as anywhere.
Yeah, well, it's more likely to start in the US, because the US just keeps on fucking poking other people and hoping that they will back down.
Iran, for example, is relentlessly seeking to develop nuclear weapons.
This is a lie. In fact, the fucking US intelligence community says it's a lie. Their own national intelligence estimate, the most recent one, which they felt no need to revise, they keep referring to it, says that Iran has no nuclear weapons program. They also have no intention of getting one. They did have one prior to 2003, but they abandoned it under U.S. pressure, and the intelligence community's assessment in the NIE was that U.S. pressure is actually effective in getting them to forego nuclear weapons. What they do have is a nuclear energy program. This is all very well known. I mean, it was one of the major embarrassments of 2007 for the U.S. government was when the NIE was published. I'm not leaked, it was just published. And it just totally destroyed the entire case that Bush at the time was making to make threats against Iran. So this is just a total lie.
It hasn't been subtle about what it intends to do with them.
Yeah, well, no, that's to say it's very open about the fact that it hasn't got them and it isn't developing them. Although you really couldn't blame them if they started considering it, given what the U.S. has been doing lately.
Destroy Israel.
Okay, that is actually a fake quote.
Former Iranian President Rafsanjani even called Israel a one-bomb country, referring to the damage that one
I would love...
nuclear device would do to the geographically small nation. Jerusalem isn't going to sit back and allow Tehran to achieve its nuclear ambitions, and neither should
They don't have nuclear ambitions, though.
the United States. You don't have to be a national security expert to understand why.
Because you don't have to be a national security expert to understand why they lie about this. The thing about Iran is that it is a thorn in the U.S.'s side because they became independent from the U.S. in 1979. They don't give a shit about the fact that, there was misogyny and fundamentalism in the, post-revolutionary regime. They don't really care. They're fine with misogyny and fundamentalism in fucking Saudi Arabia. They love it there. They were fine, actually, with the U.S.-imposed dictatorship of the Shah seeking nuclear weapons before 1979. The only thing they don't like about Iran is that they are independent of the U.S., and they cannot be counted on to just sort of obediently go along with whatever the U.S. strategic aims in the region are. That's all they care about. And you can't just openly say that and explain the history, because then people say, well, maybe we shouldn't be fucking with them. Maybe they have had every right to be pissed off with us, and maybe we shouldn't have imposed a horrible mass murderous dictator on them in the first place, who liberals on fucking Facebook still romanticize. These pictures of rich women in, like, 1971 Iran. And they're like, see, look at the lifestyle before the revolution. It's like, yeah, for about 0.1% of the population, maybe. Jordan Peterson has a much worse voice than this guy.
First, Israel's a close ally.
Which is to say that they are just they could barely be considered independent at all. Israel would collapse if the U.S. weren't bankrolling them. They're totally dependent on the U.S., and they've managed to piss off everybody else that could potentially help them out.
Second, Iranian nukes would cause chaos in the world.
No, See, what he means by chaos? See, okay, leaving aside the fact that, again, it's a lie. They don't have a nuclear weapons program. The issue is not, they're not gonna fire them off. They're not going to make a first strike. Everybody knows that because if a country like Iran or the DPRK does a first strike, what happens is there's no more Iran or no more DPRK. They know that. It's a deterrent. That's the reason the US hates it. Because the minute a country has WMD, they can't invade it arbitrarily.
Often asked, why do we give Israel $4 billion a year in security assistance when it already has such a strong military?
Well, because 75% of that money goes straight into the pockets of U.S. corporations, and most of the rest goes to U.S.-Israeli joint ventures. That's subsidizing the fucking NASDAQ.
There are two answers to that question.
But one is racism, and the other is imperialism.
First, Israel has such a strong military, in part because we're Israel's partner.
Yeah, which is another way of saying that Israel would be completely up a creek if they ever seriously pissed off the U.S. And they know that. They talk about it quite openly. In fact, the Zionist movement, if you go back to the pre-state period, one of the major sort of planks of Zionist strategic doctrine was they knew there was no way they were going to be able to colonize. They were going to get their own colony, independently of the imperialist powers, because then they'd be going against the will of the imperialist powers, and there was no way they're going to win. They needed to find an imperialist patron. And so they thought, for a while, they considered Russia. For a while, it was Britain, and then eventually it became the U.S.
And second, our investment in Israel's defense is an investment in our own security. If we don't want the Middle East problems like Iranian aggression to come here...
Iranian aggression? Fuck off. What about you? I mean, it's so cute to hear the U.S. talk about aggression when the U.S. is, especially in the Middle East, when the U.S. is still occupying the Middle East. Nobody actually wants them there. Except a racist colonial regime that also shouldn't be there.
We need to stop Iran there. Israel...
yeah, because otherwise Iran might invade New Jersey. Right. We need to stop it. They're only 2 days' drive from Harlingen, Texas. Admittedly, much of that drive is underwater.
Israel's helping us hold that line. Israel's modern history is one...
Yeah, I mean, I have no notes there. That's actually true. Israel is a major element of U.S. imperial strategy in a strategically important region. He hasn't pointed out that the reason it's a strategically important region is that it's where U.S. economic rivals get their energy supplies, but that's why. It's been understood for ages that if the U.S. controlled the Middle East, and they were slated to do so because that was just, they took over for the British Empire in the late 40s, that they would be able to just blackmail Europe. And to a great extent, they're doing that. I mean, they're even more now with this war in Ukraine, where they've managed to set it up economically so that this war, so that Europe is actually losing money on it, because all of this aid that the U.S. is sending is specifically earmarked for U.S. weapon systems and U.S. products, which means that even though Ukraine might actually have imported stuff from closer by, Western European countries, conventionally, they can't. It's all going to the U.S. And actually, the EU is kind of pissed off about this, because they wanted to be making money off of the destruction of Ukraine, too.
One of constant conflict with its neighbors. And
yeah, that's the thing about being a racist colonial regime. Actually, though, let me see. Saudi Arabia, Israel's not in conflict with them. Much to the embarrassment of Saudi Arabia. I mean, one of the great things in the WikiLeaks cables, see, Saudi Arabia, they like to sort of make occasional nods to popular sentiment and criticize Israel when they carry out a massacre in Gaza or something. But then if you look at, like, the Riyadh WikiLeaks cables, the representatives are celebrating it, saying it's wonderful, they want to see more of that. I mean, the Abraham Accords that, from the Trump administration, their legacy, such as it is, in the region, really said the quiet part out loud, because anyone who's paying attention knows that these US-backed dictatorships in the region are actually, low-key on very good terms with Israel, even as they will criticize the horrible shit Israel does to the Palestinians, in public.
Every one of those conflicts started with an attack on Israel.
No. Every one of which
The
conflicts?
country's been in 3 major wars for its survival.
Wait.
The Arab-Israeli War in 1948,
Well, what's interesting is there's, a great, just meta-analysis of the historical record by a mainstream Israeli strategic thinker, a guy by the name of Ze'ev Ma'oz. It's called Defending the Holy Land. And what it is just a literature review, a review of analyses of archival sources on every military conflict Israel's been in. And this guy's mainstream. He was like one of the top people at one of their leading strategic think tanks. This is not a radical. He's not at all, he's not even a liberal. He's just a mainstream military policy wonk. And what he says, he comes to the conclusion that, with the possible exception, he even had to qualify 1948 for obvious reasons, of 1948, all of the wars that Israel has been in have been wars that Israel chose to be in and that would not have happened otherwise. That's the Yom Kippur War, that is the 67 war where the Israel invaded Egypt and occupied the West Bank and Gaza. That is every single conflict they've been in.
the Six-Day War in 1967,
Yeah, they didn't. They started that one too.
and the Yom Kippur War in 1973.
Which actually, at the time, they were occupying part of Egypt, and Egypt kicked them out. They started. I mean, when you're occupying somebody else's territory, you don't get to claim self-defense when they decide to kick you out of it.
Israel has prevailed in every instance, in no small part because the U.S. has stood by the Jewish state.
Okay, leaving aside the Jewish state bullshit, actually, in the case of 48, it was Czechoslovakia. The U.S. actually, until 1967, was very careful not to be too committed to Israel's military. They wanted to be one of many. It was until 67, when Israel defeated Nasserism, that the U.S. said, actually, these people would make a nice attack dog. We're going to just bankroll them to the hilt.
During Republican and Democratic administrations, America has backed up Israel with financial aid and military equipment. But it's Israel that has paid the heaviest price. The loss of her sons and daughters defending their freedom.
Their freedom to do what?
Even today, Israel's under the threat of constant rocket barrage from terrorists in places like Gaza and Lebanon.
First of all, no. I mean, that's just bullshit. If you actually, even the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs says that's bullshit. The Palestinians in Gaza actually overwhelmingly observe ceasefires, and also there's rockets, like the rockets that like kids make in Rocketry Club have more explosive power than most of those fucking things. Almost nobody ever actually is injured or dies from them, because they simply aren't capable of that. Unlike the shit that Israel fires in large amounts.
Then there's Israel's heritage. It's the birthplace of both Judaism and Christianity, and therefore the birthplace of Western civilization.
Yeah, okay, and the idea is we shouldn't hold that against it?
We're talking the Hebrew Bible, the New Testament, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and the apostles.
Yeah, these people all look like they're straight out of South Park.
That's one reason why hundreds of thousands of Americans visit Israel every year, to connect with their deepest roots. Even if America had no security interest in Israel, Israel's history would be reason alone to want to keep it safe.
Yeah, except that's not how any of this works.
To be cut off from these treasures of our cultural past is unthinkable. Israel.
Yeah, imagine how the Palestinians feel. They're being they're being literally cut off from the treasures of their cultural past. Israel has stolen all of the Palestinian archives from pre-1948, apart from stuff that people were able to rescue. and it's basically impossible for Palestinians to get to the stuff.
Protects those treasures, and we protect Israel.
No, protecting the treasures in the case of, say, the Temple Mount Haram al-Sharif, the way they're protecting it is that they're trying to turn it into a fucking war zone.
They're also treasures of the modern kind. Israel's known as the startup nation.
Yeah, this is literally their fucking marketing campaign. That's like saying that, okay, I haven't watched enough advertising recently, so, I mean, that's like saying that, Dr. Pepper is known as the, do you want to be a pepper to drink? Like, I mean, they call themselves that. Don't get too fucking excited.
Because of its innovations in computers, medicine, and other sciences.
Mostly to do with weapons.
If there's a rival to Silicon Valley, it's Tel Aviv.
Yeah, in fact, some of the leading journalists in the world have found Israeli spyware from Israeli surveillance software companies on their mobile phones.
The technology that you rely on every day, from your desktop computer to your mobile phone, was developed or enhanced in Israel. In our strategic competition with China,
God, shut up.
the advantage of having Israel in our corner cannot be overstated.
In fact, when Israel has tried to have closer ties with China, the U.S. has come down hard on them.
I've made a rational case for why it's in our national interest to back the Jewish state.
You know, you haven't. You haven't even addressed the concept of national interest, which is complete bullshit to begin with.
So let me now make a personal one.
No, I don't really give a shit about your personal case.
Israel holds a special place in my heart.
Fuck off. And what's with that little grin that you was getting?
I love the country's raucous democracy and free press.
Raucous. They literally have military censorship. Like, you actually have to send your copy to the military censor's office before it can be published. And journalists regularly, and I'm not even talking about Palestinian journalists. They, of course, they're constantly getting arrested and held on no charge at all. But I'm talking about Israeli Jewish journalists, just mainstream journalists, who didn't realize that they were writing something that was actually subject to military censorship, and published it, or tried to publish it. I mean, and as far as raucous democracy, I guess the idea is that you'd really laugh your ass off if somebody called it a democracy when half the population subject to the jurisdiction of the state is not allowed to vote.
I admire its mix of modern and traditional life.
Which is to say that there's no civil marriage, and they have like literal fucking race laws that are not entirely hard. They're not. You couldn't really say that they're plagiarized from the Nuremberg laws, but they bear a certain similarity in a lot of ways.
From the vibrancy of Tel Aviv to the quiet of Jerusalem on Saturday, the Jewish Sabbath.
Yeah, I mean, except East Jerusalem, where the fucking settlers are screaming death to Arabs.
I'm awed by walking on the stones where Jesus once tread. I enjoy the falafel shops and the hummus and the honeycomb streets of the old city. Most of all, I'm impressed by the grit, energy, and joie de vivre of the Israeli people.
I don't really give a shit. Why do we care what this guy's impressed by? I mean, I would be insulted if, like, a fucking Trump national security advisor said that they liked my grit, energy, and joie de vivre. I would take that as proof that I really needed to reconsider my life choices.
They live under constant threat of terrorism, but they keep moving forward.
Yes, moving forward into other people's fucking land and stealing other people's houses and their water.
I've traveled over 75
and moving ever closer to fascism. It's interesting this comes up at a time when a literal fascist government has ended up in power there. Like, I mean, the Kahanists who actually whose organizations were actually banned in Israel as extremist for a long time, they're in the fucking government.
Countries, and enjoyed my time in most of them, but they all feel foreign. Israel feels like home.
Well, why? Maybe that's because you're paying for it?
Now that might sound strange, but only to people who haven't been there.
Well, I mean, it also just sounds strange because literally everything this guy says sounds a little bit weird. Especially the way he has that little weird little half smile every time he talks about this. Like, I mean, if you look at the way he says, he's going to make a personal case. Israel is a special place in my heart, and then he goes, and it's like, what the fuck's that?
Let me make one final argument on Israel's behalf.
Oh, may I?
Israel is. We don't question the legitimacy.
That's not an argument. Yes, it exists. Like, fucking eczema exists
Of Belgium
too.
Or Mozambique or Thailand or
I do.
any other country in the world.
Yes, we fucking do. We question the legitimacy of the GDR. We question the legitimacy of the Soviet Union. Question the legitimacy of the current independent state of Cuba. Question the legitimacy of the fucking last Iraqi government before the U.S. occupation. I mean, the U.S. kind of questioned the legitimacy of a lot of fucking countries.
So why is Israel's legitimacy questioned?
Because it hasn't got any.
From the UN to college campuses, activists deny Israel's right to exist.
No country has a right to exist. I mean, that's not even a radical statement. That's just the state of international
Israel was
law.
an ancient country. It now thrives as a modern democracy. It was established by the United Nations in 1947. 9 million people live there.
Yeah, and a lot of them are, at best, third-class citizens.
Jews, Christians, and Muslims.
Yeah, I'm sure the fucking Ward Cleaver... I'm sure that Christians living in Palestine are Ward Cleaver, looking like fucking Ward Cleaver there.
Israel is, and always will be. I'm Robert O'Brien for Prager University.
Okay. Done with him. Yes, he was kind of boring. Full of shit, though, and vaguely creepy. I mean, that twitch he has. I mean, he just goes... Every time he's talking about, like, he's going to make a personal case or whatever. Okay, let's see. Now, where shall we go next? We've got a good amount of time left to go. We've got Caleb Maupin on fascism and homosexuality. We've got Haz, the most insecure man in history. The man who is, like, proud of the fact that he has, like, a 3-year-old's knowledge of genital anatomy and apparently thinks that he came out of his mother's asshole. We've got Xander Hole on abuse and toxicity on the left. We've got actually, I'm kind of curious about Caleb Maupin. This is what I believe. I feel like that's gonna be pretty. That should be pretty buck wild. I am open to suggestions. Let's see what else we got. Well, we finished the... Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, Haz is that thing that killed Tasha Yar. We've also got Vosh talking about how the Turkey situation is bad, which is kind of cute since he's, like, such a fucking NATO stan, and NATO is what is doing... The Turkey situation is NATO? So... Well, this is what I believe is pretty short, and then we could move on to another one. We've got about, a little under half an hour. Kind of curious about this is what I believe, personally. If it sucks, we can always move her to something else.
Someone who calls myself a communist.
I love how he always puts it that way. Actually, you make a very good point. We're going to look at Vosh talking about Turkey and see if... That sounds good. Let's see. That was Caleb Maupin on what he believes. But, I mean, you're right that there's amazing cringe potential in Vosh talking about Turkey. So we're gonna look at Vosh talking about Turkey. Fuck it.
Erdogan has said he's going to launch another ground invasion of Rojava. I know.
First of all, it's Erdogan. That G is pronounced like sort of a W thing.
And the U.S.
I know. Yo, it sucks. They're gonna have not another invasion of Rojava. Like, I mean, he says it like he just remembered he has to take the fucking bins out.
is already greenlighting all their airstrikes, and the White House basically just said it's Turkey's right to do all this.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. Okay, what does that tell you about NATO and Vosh? The people that you've been standing the shit out of for the past couple of months. Like, that they're greenlighting genocide. And in fact, without them, the genocide would not be possible. Now, one thing I just want to point out, I mean, people have said, well, Turkey's an arms exporter. Yeah, but there's, like, arms and there's arms. The weapons Turkey exports are all pretty low-grade things. They do not have... There is no such thing as a Turkish bomber plane, a Turkish fighter plane. There are U.S., British, and German fighter bomber planes with Turkish pilots. Like, their entire military edge, the reason that they can go around doing this kind of shit is very specifically that they are supported by, as a NATO country, they get all the top weapon systems.
Erdogan vowed on Tuesday that Turkey would soon launch a ground operation in Syria's Kurdish...
Erdogan, shut the fuck. I mean, that sounds like kaiju that would fight Godzilla.
Targets defying mounting international pressure. Cool, great. White House claims Turkey continues to face legitimate terrorist threats to its south and has the right to defend itself. I keep telling you guys, man, we never, ever, ever should have let Turkey into NATO. Turkey doesn't belong.
We? Who's the hell is we? When did Vosh have any say in that?
In NATO.
Why is Turkey wrong in NATO? NATO likes fascist dictatorships. Turkey wasn't even the only one in NATO. Spain, fucking Portugal. I'm not sure if when Portugal ended up in NATO. Greece, though. Greece definitely was a fascist dictatorship when it came into NATO. NATO likes fascism. NATO, in fact, had an operation called Operation Gladio, and it's only been properly investigated in Italy. That's the only place where we know anything about it. And the whole thing was they recruited huge numbers of, like, Nazis. And the idea was they were going to be sort of stay-behind operations in the case of a Soviet invasion, which everybody knew was not going to happen. But the thing is, they gave huge caches of weapons to these fascists, and the fascists did all sorts of wonderful fast shit with it.
Seriously. They're barely a part of the West, and they constantly...
Who gives a shit if they're barely a part of the West? First of all, what does that even mean? What kind of racist bullshit is that? Like, I don't... First of all, NATO shouldn't exist. Like, I mean, he thinks that Turkey's the problem, but he's just read that the U.S. says it's great. The U.S. is endorsing the genocide that he is mildly annoyed with. Like... I mean, I've seen him so much more animated about, like, fake genocide, like when he was making up the idea that Professor Flowers wanted to exterminate white South Africans or something.
Push against our geopolitical interests. They contribute to...
who's our geopolitical interests? First of all, who's us? Second of all, maybe if the U.S. is saying that they're going to bankroll this genocide, that maybe they think the genocide actually is more in keeping with U.S. political interests, geopolitical interests, than not committing genocide, and you can see why. You can actually see why. It's the same reason the U.S. doesn't give two shits about the Palestinians. The Kurds and the Palestinians have basically nothing to offer that U.S. ruling class wants. All they are, their very existence, calls imperialist settlements in the region into question. Just by existing, they are a source of destabilization of imperialist arrangements in the region. So the U.S. is never gonna fucking give a shit about them.
Destabilization of the Middle East, which that's our job. Thank you. They recently
Oh wait, okay, so that's our job. That's a very cute joke there. So what now? Let's try putting two and two together now, Vosh. So the U.S. thinks it's good what Erdogan's doing. NATO thinks it's good what Erdogan's doing. Maybe the Erdogan is doing the bidding of the U.S.
withheld like a NATO vote unless Syria changed some condition that had to do with the recognition of the like.
Um,
Uh,
what he's actually talking about, though, he's so fucking ignorant. It's actually kind of impressive. It's an art form to be this ignorant. He's talking about the fact that in order for new NATO states to join, the condition Turkey imposed, and everybody else was okay with them imposing, was that they had to send Kurdish refugees back to their deaths in Turkey. And Finland said, yeah, okay. Sweden said, yeah, okay. Germany was already doing it. That's what this is. That's what he's trying to talk about. That's NATO. That's NATO. That's what the NATO expansion is. It is dead Kurds.
Is Turkey trying to conquer Turkey? No, there are Kurdish separatists.
Has he ever reneged on his support for Biden, considering the fact that everything he thought would happen under a second Trump term has happened under Biden, Phoenix-esque? And not that I know of. I mean, I don't subject myself to this guy off of stream. I could have missed something, but what I've heard him say about Biden actually suggests he still is very much on Team Creepy Joe.
To the south, Rojava is in portions of eastern Syria. It's a whole hotbed. It's a whole thing.
Oh god, it's a whole thing. God, I mean, he is so fucking econ undergraduate asshole in student pub, where you know you're talking with your friends, having a drink, talking about the fucking student union is actually screwing people out of pay, and he'll go up there, yeah, it's a whole thing, yeah. See, that you have to do that because it creates jobs to do it that way. It's a whole thing. And then he talks for like 6 hours and completely de-alcoholizes your beer.
Fuck did the Kurds even do to get all this hate? We're currently experiencing like pre-genocidal conditions for trans people. The answer is nothing. I
mean, again, this is such a nothing analysis. The thing is, yeah, on a moral level, nothing. But the thing is, Kurds and Palestinians both, simply by existing, call current imperialist settlements in the region into question. That's it. As long as there are Kurds, as long as there are Palestinians, certain borders that the U.S. imperialism thinks very highly of might have to be revisited.
I mean, look, authoritarian countries don't like separatist groups. They don't like separatist ethnic groups.
What the fuck is an authoritarian country? I mean, the U.S. doesn't. What is a separatist ethnic group as well? I mean, the U.S. and Canada aren't being very nice to indigenous people. Are they separatist ethnic groups?
Turkey is a democracy. Like, I mean,
it's a fucking military dictatorship.
Look, a lot of people don't like the Kurds. Iran doesn't like the Kurds. Syria doesn't like the Kurds. Iraq doesn't.
Actually, Syria, that's not true. The Syria, as it happens, there was sort of a mutual toleration kind of arrangement between the Syrian state forces and the YPG, the Rojava movement. Basically, it was sort of, you don't fuck with us, we don't fuck with you, and, we both try to get rid of ISIS, sort of, was more or less the basis of it. But Syria was not who the Kurds in Rojava had to worry about. In fact, when, Turkey and ISIS started to make this major offensive, and you really do have to speak of them at the same time, because it's been known for years now that ISIS fighters will come over across the Turkish border. Kurdish fighters have been observing this for ages. International observers have been observing this for ages. Turkey and ISIS are working together with NATO weapons, which tells you everything you need to know, I think, about how NATO feels about ISIS, kind of. They're really... the idea seems to be that ISIS kind of suits them sometimes when they're pointed in the right direction, which is usually how they see, fucking genocidal motherfuckers. But, yeah. So where the fuck was I? What was he just saying?
Look, a lot of people don't like the Kurds.
Oh, yeah, so that's right, the Kurds and Syria. Actually, when all that started happening with the invasion of Afrin and stuff like that, a few years ago, the Kurds and the Syrian Democratic Forces, which were actually a force that actually includes Syrian state forces, coordinated defense. They are not actually in real conflict. I mean, last I heard anyway, they were not in any kind of major active conflict with the Syrian government. The Syrian government has a lot more to worry about.
Kurds. Iran
much
doesn't
closer
like the
to
Kurds.
home.
Syria doesn't like the Kurds. Iraq doesn't like the Kurds. Yeah, you have like
The U.S. doesn't like the Kurds, but
Kurdistan has been like an ongoing... Yeah, this is here. Here's the Kurdistan map from the Kurdish project. That'll never happen, unfortunately.
It's not a question of whether it'll happen. The point is, it already exists.
Open the photo. Thank you. Here we go. Yeah. Basically, okay, you got...
That is not... It's not a thing that we'll never have. That's literally where those yellow suns are. That is literally where Kurds have been living for thousands and thousands of years.
You guys know how the Middle East doesn't exactly have the best lines dividing territory? The Kurdish ethnic group...
They should really work on that. They're really just the Middle Easterners. They're just really not good at drawing borders. I wonder why that is.
In this area?
This fucking guy.
Yeah.
Wonder who drew
like
those
30 million of
lines.
them. It's 18 million in Turkey, 8 in Iran. They want their own community.
They have it. They've had it for a very long time. The issue is that they've been persecuted in that community the whole time. Well, quite a lot, certainly in the modern era anyway.
I think this is an example of like a pretty good case for separatist action because they're an oppressed minority in every single other fucking country and they're all right next to each other. Yeah.
Well, they have Vosh's approval. That's great.
British inhabited area. You have the lit up area right here. So you got Iran and Iraq and Syria and Turkey. And anyway, Rojava,
Armenia actually as well. Just a little bit.
Has taken advantage of the Syrian civil war to occupy parts of eastern Syria.
Yeah, they didn't occupy them. They lived in them. This wasn't... I mean, occupy implies that they just sort of showed up one day. They were occupying the places that they've occupied for a very, very long time.
And
this guy, Vosh does not need to talk about things. He does not know much on the subject of things.
Obvious reasons, Turkey really doesn't like a radical, militant, anarchist Kurdish group, like right on their southern border, that directly collaborates with Kurds in Turkey. So they want to bop them, unfortunately.
They want to bop them? That's his word for fucking genocide? Like, when it's not white people in fictional world? When it's like, I mean, when it's like fictional white genocide that he's just like fantasizing about in order to attack a black leftist, then he freaks the fuck out. When it's Kurds, it's like, yeah, they want to bop him. Yeah. I mean, that's, I'm guessing, he talks about Hitler. Yeah, he kind of wanted to bop the Jews.
How are the Kurds different from the surrounding ethnicities? It doesn't, I mean, ethnic, like, we're all the same people.
Yeah, he doesn't know the answer to this. The answer is they have their own language. They have kind of a couple of different closely related languages. Their indigenous languages are actually are Indo-European languages, Indo-Aryan languages, related to Persian, related to Hindi, related as well distantly to English. And they're surrounded, and they speak them in an area that is largely Arabic and Turkic speaking. Um, so they have their own language. They have like their own, culture. They have a whole lot of things, and that's all that They have a distinctive culture and language. That's it. But he doesn't even know that. This guy, like Rojava, is like one of the most important things you'd have to know to cosplay as an anarchist, which he has occasionally expressed an interest in doing, and yet he hasn't even bothered to learn the basics on that.
What really matters are the social lines that are drawn. Even if there are no real
It doesn't matter because he can't answer the question.
differences culturally, the fact that they're given a different identity and
There are differences culturally, you complete nong.
persecuted through that name is...
They have their own fucking language, and in fact, you can end up in prison just for speaking Kurdish in Turkey.
enough, I think. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty gay. Yeah,
What
of
the
course,
fuck?
Black in the Book. American soldiers worked with Rojava for a while, because
Well, it's more like worked on them. What happened was, I mean, I remember a lot of fucking NATO stands like Vosh acted like the PKK. I mean, not PKK. The YPJ, YPG were like U.S. allies or something like that. But the reality is the U.S. actually just kind of used them, and they were aware they were being used, and occasionally the U.S. did things that put them at extreme risk. And then when Turkey said they wanted to invade Afrin and exterminate the Kurds, the U.S. said, "Yeah, go right ahead. We'll coordinate that with you."
they worked with American soldiers to fight against ISIS in the...
That's not really accurate. I mean, what's accurate is that the U.S. directed ISIS towards Kurdish towns, put them directly in the crosshairs of ISIS, and then they fought off ISIS.
area. Rojava has had some of the most effective anti-ISIS soldiers. America palled up with them.
That's not quite right. I mean, right now, Turkey and ISIS are together. ISIS and Turkey are the ones doing this, and the U.S. is arming them.
And while America was in Rojava, while we had troops in the area, Turkey could not move in on them. Because obviously Turkey can't invade areas where U.S. troops are stationed.
More accurately, it would look a little bit awkward if the U.S., who claimed to care about the Kurds, had Turkey invade right in front of them, when theoretically they could do something about it. So they left the area and then told the Kurds, if you don't leave your homes in Afrin and those areas, then you'll be fair game for the Turks, or you can retreat and just take refuge in more inland areas, and they will leave you alone there. I mean, the U.S. completely just told the Kurds in northeast Syria that they were fair game.
That would be dumb. They're still in Rojava. How many U.S. troops are in Rojava? Didn't Trump pull them?
They're not in Rojava. They are in Syria. They're occupying some of the main oil areas of Syria.
Well, where Trump pulled them out a while ago. About 2,500? I don't remember. Can I get a source on that? Oh, do you mean the Americans who are protecting...
Oh, yeah. Okay, Quoteth in his chat points out that Turkey, i.e. NATO, backed ISIS against the Kurds. Yeah. It cites the nation. That's better than I would expect the nation to be on this.
The oil fields. That's further west. That's not in the areas that Turkey wants to shell in. Trump moved some of them off. It's a whole thing.
Well, yeah, exactly, because it would be embarrassing if somebody got footage, and there are internationals in the with the YPG, who are there in part to document this movement and document their struggle. And it would be really embarrassing if somebody managed to catch pictures of Turks massacring Kurds where you could actually see a U.S. position nearby. Because then they'd have to explain why they didn't intervene, and even though that we all know the answer is because they didn't wanna, because they're kind of okay with that. So they moved away so they could be out of sight and claim that there was just nothing they could do.
If you were president, would you send in troops to help Rojava fight back Turkey? No. What I would...
You wouldn't need to. You would call. All you have to do is say, "Look." You say, "Look, your membership in NATO and your access to all these advanced weapons that you are dependent on in order to do all your sort of big boy violence, are in jeopardy if you do any shit to the Kurds." I mean, the U.S. in particular has been utterly underwriting Turkish militarism for decades, including back with the last time that they were an explicit military dictatorship, and they were a member of NATO then too.
The one to do is have troops there to help fight off ISIS. I wouldn't say it's about fighting Turkey because they're a NATO ally. You would have American troops there as a way of discouraging Turkey from invading.
You would not need American troops there. The thing about a country depending on you for its air force is that you got a certain amount of influence without having to get into a shootout with them.
Because Rojava is on Syrian territory, and we don't really have an issue with putting troops there because everyone has. Yeah. People would say you're using that as an excuse. Turkey would never dare fire shells at American military encampments. That would be insane.
Yeah, of course not. And they would never dare do so against U.S. orders, either. Which is why they held off until the U.S. cleared a path for them.
Are there Russians in Turkey, too? Well, there are certainly Russians in Syria.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Turkey and Greece and Spain. I'm not sure, when did Spain... Now I'm going to have to check because I don't want to do a Vosh. When did Spain join NATO? 1982. Okay, so they were not a dictatorship at that point. They were just barely not one. I mean, they're still just barely not one because they were running the, this model, this modelo post-fascista, where basically fascists got to write their constitution for them, and it's still, you could go to prison for laughing at the fact that Carrero Blanco became Spain's first astronaut. I mean, people are literally in prison for that now unless they've been released since. I mean, people have gone to prison for that in the past few years. I mean, I think they're leading Western Europe in the imprisonment of fucking rappers for criticizing monarchies. Yeah, I mean, wonderfully democratic place, Spain. When did Portugal... Okay, yeah, Portugal was an outright fascist dictatorship at the time when they joined. So, yeah, I mean, NATO is a club of, Western European countries, the US, and their pet fascists. That's how it's always fucking been.
Yeah, the most recent Iranian protest, the hijab protests, the woman who was killed by the police was Kurdish.
Wow, Vosh knew a fact.
The morality police beat her to death, in large part probably because of her ethnicity. The U.S. just...
I don't know of anyone actually claiming that. I mean, I could have missed it, but my understanding is she was beaten to death because the fucking pricks didn't like how she was wearing her hijab, full stop.
Let Turkey bomb a joint U.S. Rojava base with troops stationed there?
There's no such thing.
This morning, Turkey bombed a joint SDF coalition base, killing 2 members of the SDF's U.S.-trained anti-terror forces who are instrumental in combating ISIS. Escalation continuing as Turkish bombs continue to fall in our region. Which base? Which base? If it's an SDF coalition base that American forces have retreated from, that makes sense. If it's a base where there...
Yeah, which almost certainly it would be. Well... I have absolutely no idea how you could, but I mean, Vosh knows these things. He knows stuff. I mean, he's like, he has the authoritative voice. This is the voice of knowing thing. And this is the voice of know thing, talk incessantly, eat hot chip, and lie.
There are currently Americans, then this is insane.
And that's me. I use copy pasta from like 5 years ago.
Which base? Why wouldn't they... Look at the first comment. Yeah, I see. Now, Turkey actively shelled U.S. troops during Trump's presidency? Jesus Christ.
Yeah. That will not have actually been. I imagine some tense words will have been spread. Clearly, the U.S. didn't give too much of a shit about it because they continued to arm Turkey.
How many nukes does Turkey have? 50 nukes? That's not enough to end a world. Go for it. It's time.
What's amazing is, he just so totally lets the U.S. off the hook. Because the thing is, the minute you acknowledge how much power the U.S. actually has in this situation, you don't have to talk about all this fucking dick waving bullshit of, oh, just like invade Turkey or something like that. You just call them up. You say, look, guys, you like the weapons, right? You like the weapons. You want to have more of them. Well, you're not going to get any more of them. You keep doing that shit. So stop doing that shit. And they stop doing that shit because they want the weapons. That is actually kind of how imperialism works. And the minute you know that, the minute you understand that there's a lot of atrocities committed by U.S. client states like Saudi Arabia, like fucking Israel, like Turkey, that could easily, like Colombia. Not so much the moment, but in historically, that actually could be ended without anything more than an exchange of cross words. You realize just how fucking responsible the U.S. actually is for these sorts of atrocities. Oh, holy shit! You've been around, haven't you, Shakespeare? You were in Damascus when the U.S. started drone striking it and such. You'll never forget get the ruin out of buildings and the smoke and the crying people. Like, yeah, holy shit! How did you end up in Damascus when the U.S. was drone striking it? That's that's a fucking story.
None? Why'd they say 50 then? God damn. Either I didn't hear about this or I didn't remember it. Absolutely psychotic. Because of the current rules of engagement, the Americans did not respond to the attack and instead fell back. No injuries were reported amongst the American forces. Fuck. I wonder what would have happened if there was an American death.
Um, Probably not a whole lot.
That would have been... What the fuck, isn't Turkey part of NATO? Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, probably they were deliberately making sure that they would not have U.S. casualties because Erdogan knows perfectly well that pissing off the U.S. is not in his interest. Because he needs the fucking weapons.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think they should be in NATO.
NATO shouldn't be, dude. Acting like Turkey's the problem. Yeah, like NATO's all wonderful except for fucking Turkey. Fuck off. NATO's fucking evil and has been from its start.
When was Turkey admitted into NATO? Their admission into NATO was pretty much guaranteed. Yeah, originally. It was originally. Their admission into NATO was pretty much guaranteed from the get-go because of their fucking strategic location. I don't know if you guys have looked at a world map lately, but Turkey controls, like, a really fucking important part of land. Here, give me a good...
Also, it's right on the Soviet border, and for a long time was a major nuke emplacement of U.S. nukes that were pointed directly at the Soviet
map
Union.
Size, please. This one has Istanbul circled for some fucking reason. But you have, like, half of the Black Sea.
Probably because Istanbul is on what is conventionally recognized as the boundary where Europe ends and Asia begins. Maybe that's why.
Ports. You have the way into the Black Sea goes through Turkey. You have like the nearest bridge between the Middle East and Europe. There's so much. Yeah.
NATO it's had no legitimate purpose since like 1949. Because its entire purpose has been rollback. That was the term that they used internally to describe this goal of, like, supporting reactionary forces in Western Europe in hopes of, like, preventing, in Western and Eastern Europe, to prevent any kind of working class organizing going on in Western Europe and weaken to some extent the Soviet Union and, Soviet rule over the Soviet bloc in the eastern part of it. But of course they couldn't really be all that aggressive about it because there was a Soviet deterrent. Then the Soviet Union collapsed, they said yippee, and started going on a fucking invasion fest, and they've not looked back. Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, I would. When I start seeing U.S. drones in a place where I'm staying, I get the fuck out of there too. I think that is a very reasonable thing. Like that's why I haven't been back to Chile. Like friends of mine who do not scare early or do not scare easily and know their way around a fucking struggle are like, yeah, stay away. You don't want to get shot. And it's like, yeah, actually I don't. And I mean, yeah, and it's like on the end, if comrades who are saying that, I don't even have to feel too guilty about it, as much as I hate, knowing that my comrades are like, fighting, getting fucking chemical weapons fired at them in the streets, and I'm kind of, I'm nowhere there because I'm in the middle of fucking nowhere here. But yeah, so there we are. It's almost 1, but I'm gonna finish this video because it's almost over.
I'll make Turkey the 51st state. Man, I can't.
Turkey was actually, during the 1990s, the leading recipient of U.S. aid alongside Colombia. I mean, outside of Israel, which was, is considered sort of a separate category unto itself.
I can't really even say, like, haha, they should just be the 51st state anymore, because America's about to be a fucking fascist dictatorship. So, like, what's the... No, they shouldn't be, actually.
Well, it sounds like Turkey fits in with NATO really well, then.
What do the NATO documents say about NATO members fighting each other? Don't.
Okay. Okay, that's this dickhead finished, and that's us finished for the night. Thank you to everyone who's joined in. Hope you've enjoyed yourself, and if you enjoyed the stream, please consider paying for the stream. I'm having a really rough time of it at the moment, and as much help as possible, I appreciate all the help I can get, which you can get by subscribing to my hyperpolyglotting stream, give me a prime over at hyperpolyglotting, or using the tip command and making a direct contribution. It's a really weird time for me where I've got all sorts of exciting stuff that seems like it's about to pop off, and then I also have sort of this feeling that the walls are crashing in. So, assistance is always appreciated. Thank you, Phoenix. Thank you, Shakespeare. Thank you to my patrons over at my Patreon. Thank you, Adam, if I didn't just say your name already. And have a good night. And here, let me just... Oh no, wrong command. There we go. If you want to make a direct contribution to support the stream, you can just drop me a tip there, and it would be much appreciated, though I know everybody's having a rough go of it at the moment, so I wouldn't want anyone to feel pressurized on that score. Thank you to everyone who's joined me. See you next week.